listening to Your Ultimate Life with Kellan Fluckiger, only on LA Talk Radio.
All right, here we are back again. David, sorry about that. We got interrupted by techno glitches, speaking of hundreds of pivots and all the kinds of things that go on. So you were telling me in the safe space where people can get feedback about a proposal that they might get and move it from an I-centered proposal that the company won't care about to something that's more focused on the needs of the company. And you were just about to reveal the massive $1 million secret. We got interrupted.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a massive $1 million secret, but it definitely is a change in perspective. And I think it can land much better in a prospect's lap if the focus is on the client or the prospect rather than on the person that's selling the job.
Well, I love that. And, speaking of pivots, so let's pivot. We got interrupted and we'll pivot now. So as you think about growing this community and taking the opportunity to serve entrepreneurs, serve consultants and coaches and people that are making the same journey that you've made, that I've made, I want you to talk about I want to dig into the personal side a little bit. What makes this important to you? Why is this something you really, because I know we've known each other for several years now, put a lot of effort and energy in this. Why is this important to you?
Well, if you think about how many hours per week, hours per year you put into your work and you develop expertise in a particular area, you should get paid what you're worth. You should be able to do more of what you love and get paid what you're worth. And I think that is only fair.
Well, I agree, but I'm going to dig in a little bit more. In David's heart, why is this something he can do, that he wants to do? What motivates you to do this thing? I mean, you could do lots of stuff. You could really focus on nonprofit consulting. That's big. I have a client who does nothing but create nonprofits, and there's tons of that going on. And so you could do a lot of other things. I'm just curious what makes you devote your time, attention, and love to this community of transitioning people to help them overcome their fears, to help them understand the steps to transitioning from a corporate structured setting to where they're sort of on the front lines themselves. And why is that important to David? I guess we're getting a little squishy territory, but that's okay.
No, that's okay, because I think it's important because I am more satisfied having more control over my career destiny. I see other people struggle with the same issues. And if I can be helpful to them, I'd like to be able to do that.
I asked that question because, as people, human beings, we seem to be wired physically to really be in love and service of each other. And we're happiest, we feel best when we're about that. And we see examples of people chasing other kinds of rainbows, and some misery that associates with that. And so I always like to ask, what is it that drives David's heart into this place? So thank you for sharing a little of that. And you can share more if you like. Where do you see this going in the next year? 2024 just got started 5 minutes ago. So where's David after going? 2024, 2025, what's going on?
Growing the community, serving more corporate refugees. And, one of the things that I see people struggle with, and you and I talked about this, and I think it was before we started recording the first segment, is having focus, discipline, and perseverance to see something through long enough to feel like you have created elements of success that you're satisfied with. It takes a lot of effort. And it is helpful to have a framework to do this. That is part of the framework of what we use in the Smashing the Plateau community. It's 5 basic steps. Um, we've talked a lot about the interaction among community members. That's one piece of it. It starts off with being really clear on what's important to you in your life and setting some broad goals that will support your being able to focus on what's important to you and to create greater success around what's important to you. And then creating a plan that is concrete to work toward those goals. And then the whole implementation process is the interaction with other colleagues in a community setting so that you can iterate in a structured way week in and week out, because that's where the success really happens. Ideas, as we know as entrepreneurs, ideas are a dime a dozen, but implementation is priceless. And so I have found that the structure that I've always used in my own career has been helpful when other people start to tap into it. So doing this in a community setting where there's a basic framework that everybody can tap into while they're supporting one another is what helps people really blossom in their careers.
So I love that. Focus, discipline, and perseverance. In your experience, is that a difficult thing for corporate refugees, people that have been in place where someone else provided the salary structure, all that sort of thing? The business model, like you said, as an engineer, you didn't realize your company was falling apart until they dragged you in and said, "Hi, you're doing a great job. Get out of here." That sort of thing. How is it? Is it difficult for people to learn focus, discipline, and perseverance?
I think it's hard for a lot of people to deploy these traits. And yes, I find that particularly when people leave the corporate structure where somebody else is setting the framework to the quote unquote the freedom of entrepreneurship, where freedom is kind of a misnomer, because yes, you have you have the ultimate control over your time, but if you don't use your time wisely, you're not going to make any money. So that you need to realize that the more structured you are as an entrepreneur, the more you're likely to be successful. But the good news is you get to create the structure. But again, this focus, discipline, and perseverance comes along with trying to support a structure that is going to drive success, particularly financial success, if you're running a business and not a hobby.
I love that distinction, business and not a hobby. And it's so important. People do stuff and they dabble in side hustles all the time and they think, gee, wouldn't it be nice to make money doing this thing I like over here? But they don't really understand the focus, discipline, and perseverance until suddenly it's what they need to do. And holy crap, I didn't know it was this hard, or I had to do all these 47 other things. I want to give you a chance to tell people everything about where to find you, about where to read. I can't remember. Have you written a book or two?
No,
You haven't.
no book or two.
No book or two.
No,
Well, I
no.
would, not knowing that, I would invite you to consider that.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah,
I would
I've written
invite
lots of
you to
other
consider.
stuff.
You have.
Just not a book. Yeah,
Because
like
the
you.
journey you've described, the journey you've described is book worthy, the learnings, the process. Anyway, a different topic. But I want you to tell people where to find you, how to follow you, how to get a hold of your podcasts, plural, your channels, whatever they are, so that there's no question about where people can find your expertise, join your support group, your community, or anything else. Where can we find all that?
smashingtheplateau.com. Yeah, that is the best place. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. The Smashing the Plateau is where we share everything. It's the best place to start.
Wonderful. Is there enough stuff there that someone can learn enough that they should feel really invited to join your community?
There is, and if you would like to have a discussion about what you're finding there, reach out to me via the contact information on our website. Send me a message on LinkedIn. We also have a free profitability checklist that goes through in very short form what this framework is that I described that can be helpful to accelerate your progress. That's available at smashingtheplateau.com/profitability checklist.
Well, that's fabulous. So smashingtheplateau.com, profitability checklist, follow on LinkedIn. So now I'm just going to open it to what didn't I ask that you wish that I would, or that you want to tell me, the listeners, about business, about focus, discipline, perseverance, about yourself, about your heart, anything that you didn't talk about that we ought to talk about. Tell me.
Yeah, I would add one thing, Kellan, which is when you're making the transition from corporate to your own business, if you are testing the waters and kind of dabbling in it, thinking that maybe you'll get this consulting or coaching thing to work, or maybe you'll go get another job. Entrepreneurship is hard work. Making money as an entrepreneur is hard work. If you really want to succeed as an entrepreneur, put your heart into it, put your mind into it, and devote as much time as you can in the early stages to get it off the ground and as successful as possible.
I love that, and the fact that you've acknowledged the truth that it takes a lot of work. You know, success isn't going to come in an Amazon box, and there isn't a foolproof checklist for anybody anywhere. You made a point of mentioning hundreds or even thousands of little pivots, and I referred to that for a minute. Talk a little bit about that, about the discouragement, about the needed energy, about the signs. Talk about this pivoting process and how you keep your chin up, your heart up, and keep going when the economy, who cares, throws these pivot points at you.
Right. So I think it's important to have one primary thing that you're focusing on each week that you believe is going to make a positive impact in your business. Because if you try to do too many, you'll be overwhelmed. If you're trying to do one new thing a week, that already is a lot. One new thing where you may not have all the skills to do it. You may have to learn something. You may have to reach out to a colleague, a friend, or whatever. So don't try to do too much too fast. Second thing is every single day, speaking to your point, Kellan, about discouragement and life throwing you curveballs, I think it's really important to have as positive a mindset as possible. So get your mind in good shape, in the right framework at the beginning of the day. It could be helpful to have a buddy that you check in with every day where you can keep each other in a positive framework, particularly when stuff happens that's unexpected that could derail your efforts. Then you have somebody you can reach out to really quickly and say, listen, this just happened. Let's talk about it. So positive frame of mind, doing something physical to get your energy up as early in the day as possible is important. I find meditation can be helpful at setting your mind in the right framework. And then having some kind of check-in with, and this is part of the framework I believe is really helpful with the pivots, is once a week, have a place where you go, whether it's with one person, a small group, a community, where you report on what the progress you've made on your plan in the past week, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, where do you think feedback would be most helpful? Ask for the feedback, listen to it, take some notes. And whatever your plan was before you had this encounter, whatever your plan was for the following week, based on what you have now heard from others, make a little pivot in your plan. And then the following week, do the same thing. Report on what you've done. Get some feedback. Make a tiny pivot in your plan. Do it again the following week, right? And even if you make a 0.1% improvement in your business every single week, multiply that by 52, see where you are at the end of the year.
I love it. And I really appreciate that. Creating yourself in the morning, having things that help you, whether it's meditation or check-ins, a coaching or accountability framework, all of those things certainly are consistent with my experience. David, despite our technical interruption, I am grateful to have had you today on the show to share your decades of experience, your own pivots, the things that you're creating for people. I encourage you to keep on going. I love talking to you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Kellan.
You're certainly welcome. Listeners, I want to give you one more piece of encouragement. Check David out. He's the real deal. He's had the experience. His heart is sincere, and he's a real helpful voice and a powerful person. And I know if you are in your journey of creating more for yourself, his community, his advice, and things we've talked about on this episode will help you create your ultimate life.
You're listening to Your Ultimate Life with Kellan Fluckiger, only on LA Talk Radio.